Now I know what you might be thinking as we witness this gorgeous display of Frozen Orb. Well, let me put it this way.
I thought you were dead.
My death was greatly exaggerated.
Oh yes, my fellow sorcerers, hello and welcome to Frozen Orb in Season 4. I cannot exaggerate, stress, or convey enough just how much fun and yes, ridiculously powerful this is in this new version that I am very excited to present. Yes, it's not as strong, sadly, as it was on the PTR, chiefly because they fixed the bug that was the extra explosions from the aspect, also triggering the effect, which is a crying shame. But make no mistake, this is still up there as our best build, or at least one of them. You see, Sorcerer is in both the blessed and cursed position that we don't have a single build that is really head and shoulders. This is just it. Nothing else competes this season, at least so far from all the theory crafting. And, well, that also does mean we have about 3 to 4 pretty much equally as good options to run at endgame, and some are better than others depending on what you're doing. Frozen Orb, then, is absolutely phenomenal at just raw speed clearing. Just hurtling through the pit as you're seeing a 49 and then a 40 afterwards, nothing ridiculous, and I still haven't masterworked basically anything, so I'm very much kind of power capped at the moment with how the new endgame works, but it kind of is still so baseline strong that it's not mattering. I am pushing so easily so far and farming so much goodness. But it is just the peak build for, as they say, blasting. Its ability to kind of automatically just kill enemies ahead of you and around you in the dungeon without you even knowing is unparalleled. Because your lightning spears and your ice blades are flying all over the place, summoning more frozen orbs that then summon more of them, it just kind of propagates through whatever it is that you're doing, and you'll often get 2 packs of enemies that aren't so much a pack of enemies, but a pile of loot and corpses on the ground. And that is very, very nice. I really do love this, and even though it is not peak boss damage when it comes to Sorcerer, we will be covering that very soon, it is no slouch and absolutely hammers them down. And it should be noted that in this footage here, I am missing a key item that really ramps up your boss damage even more and kind of smooths that crack over, so it does get even better. It's also ridiculously tanky, which is one of the biggest things it's got going for it. You can really stand your ground and very easily not have to worry about basically anything other than guaranteed infinite damage one-shots from doing anything. And because of that inherent tankiness, we can be a little bit more risky with our skill points and Paragon choices for even more pure damage. It's just, bottom line, a phenomenal build, and I'm really, really happy with my take on it here, and I think you guys will be too. It is the perfect thing to transition to once you get deeper into Torment, get towards level 100, at level 100, to start really making a dent into tier 100 Nightmare dungeons, pushing the pit, getting your masterwork going, and just generally acquiring all of the things you need to acquire as fast and as easily as possible. This really is the season of Frozen Orb for Sorcerer, and I think it's going to come up a lot in more ways than you might expect. But for now, let's talk the best pure Frozen Orb build possible, and everything that makes it so deliciously incredible, including some changes we've had to make in Season 4 due to some changes that Blizzard has made in Season 4, but didn't feel like telling us about. onwards. Now introducing everyone's favorite, it's the skill tree. Let me have these, okay? I have to say that so many times across all these build videos. We begin with, as you might expect, the 2 points into Firebolt, and also, as you might expect, the Firebolt enchantment as that sweet devouring blaze crit, that burning Paragon, and all around flaming synergy is the way to go with Frozen Orb. The extra damage it adds is just too much to ignore. Then we go on to the core and get all the points into Frozen Orb, take it to enhanced, and then greater is what we want for that permanent vulnerable. Then we want a bit of devastation and full elemental dominance. We will have full mana a lot of the time, so this is a big increase. The second enchantment slot that we'll go for is, of course, Frozen Orb itself, so we just cast more and more and more of them with everything that we're doing, including Frozen Orb itself. Then over to your defensives, we want just Flame Shield, we don't really need the larger burn, we don't need the heal, this build is tanky, we can save the 2 points, spend them elsewhere, and just have the immune button. Teleport, however, is certainly worth it for both the movement speed and the DR, so we go to Shimmering, max out your glass cannon for that free 24% multiplicative more damage, we are tanky enough to take the downside easily, and then we don't get the 1 point in attunement, simply because we have so much cooldown reduction from all of the ice blades and the natural cooldown reduction, we can save the point and spend it elsewhere, though you can get this if you want. Finish up with ice armor, taken to enhance. The mana is nice, but mainly we want shimmering, as we will be reducing the cooldown massively, as we will be spending a lot of mana constantly in this build, and constant ice armor is constant you can't kill me, and constant barrier synergy like Conceited. After that, we move on to our conjuration, where we get the align the elements to get to protection, just 1 rank, so we keep getting barriers. Again, very tanky, we don't need all 3, and then 3 out of 3 in mana shield for the permanent 24% DR. Into your lucky hit, because the more lucky hit, the more conjuration Frozen Orb infinite loop will happen for you, and that's very, very good, believe me. 3 out of 3 into your conjuration mastery. This is just everything. This getting buffed on top of the new unique is what's made Frozen Orb so damn phenomenal. And then we want Lightning Spear to invoked. This means everything is stunned all of the time, and of course all of the Lightning Spears that the Frozen Orb spawn get these bonuses too, on top of us casting our own to help out with even more stacks of conjuration and to generate more Forbs. Ice Blades all the way to summon, so we get this huge cooldown reduction that you really will feel, and then we can move on to just Devouring Blaze in the Mastery section, and then over to the Frosty passives, Permafrost, Icy Touch, and Hoarfrost, the trio of just do more damage if you're doing a cold build. We don't get Frigid Breeze because we don't need the help with the mana, and the raw lucky hit on the Frozen Orb ticks themselves isn't the best, so we can spend these points better. Going over to here then, where it might start to look a little bit strange. Basically, we'll address this first. Causing Currents, which is kind of irrelevant, though it does help a little bit Lightning Spear, but Conduction. An extra 9% movement speed is really good. We just go through things faster, clear things faster, that's all well and good. It also feeds into Esu's Heirloom, which, spoiler alert, we will be wearing for even more crit chance, which is very good. This is just a nice little bit of tech to combo with the fact we have so many Lightning Spears constantly critting, so this is permanently up, and it just lets us farm faster. Now, you can, if you want, spend all 4 of these points anywhere else. You can finish up Protection if you're feeling like you are a little bit squishy, which you really shouldn't be, but just in case. You can put the 1 point in Elemental Attunement, and so on and so forth. I, however, have found it really, really nice. Another little tip is if you're facing anything particularly difficult, like the end boss of a high tier pit, you can take them out of here and then put them into Electrocution. Your Lightning Spears will keep this applied and give you an extra 15% DR, which is really nice to have. So it's very flexible. Talking of DR, damage reduction, key passive then, we're going for Via's Mastery. And the reason we're going for it is simply for 25% damage reduction. And that is the best we can do from our key passives. It's constantly on at the enhanced amount because of the lightning spears and all of their critting, but we just don't have anything else worthwhile. Of course, we don't care about any of the fire-based stuff, we don't care about crackling energy, so looking at the actual colds, well, Avalanche we don't need, because as I said, the raw lucky hit on Frozen Optics is actually quite poor, and we don't need the help with mana. The extra damage is nice, but we're casting so many, and this is happening so infrequently, it's really not that big of an increase at all, so it's kind of a waste, as is Shatter at the current stage of the game. If we're pushing Pit 150 and really getting into it, enemies start having ridiculous amounts of health, Shatter very well will make a return, but right now, things die before they freeze anyway, so this is superfluous. So all that's left is, I guess we'll just take the free 20% less damage done to us from enemies nearby. And that's actually quite really good. Don't look at it as, oh, it's really nice to get a free 20% damage reduction, and it's why this build is so tanky. So there we have it, skill tree accomplished. Let's talk gear then. Your affixes, your gems, your uniques, your aspects, and all of that loveliness. You want to have a wand and focus for this build. It used to be, I say used to be, it's only the PTR, it's not like that long ago, but still, it used to be a staff. However, they have stealth nerfed the affixes that you can roll on a two-handed staff without saying anything, at least that anyone can see, and you can no longer roll attack speed on a staff. And without that, the staff just fires Frozen Orbs too slowly to be worth the double aspect strength of Frozen Orbit, taking it to 120 over 60. It is a real shame, but it's not the biggest loss. The damage is still comparable, but it was nice to actually use a staff, you know, a little bit. In any case, wand and focus. So you want the wand for the lucky hit chance over the close damage of the daggers, as oftentimes you will be killing things that are nowhere near you with this build. In any case, then, we want Storm Swell for the extra vulnerable damage with a barrier. We'll always have a barrier, and enemies will always be vulnerable. This is very, very good. The aforementioned Frozen Orbit, a requirement. Those extra 2 pulses does a lot of damage, especially when you start stacking them up against bosses. Sadly, those pulses no longer trigger your winterglass, which apparently was a bug. Still really upset about that, but we move. Then we want ourselves accelerating. We want as much attack speed as possible. We want as many Frozen Orbs going out as possible, so this is a huge help. Then we get ourselves conceited for the extra damage with a barrier. Yes, this is the highest one I have found all season. That is ridiculous. Then we want to have Ever Living, as it's a hugely effective keep us alive, and enemies will always be vulnerable, so this really, really helps out. That said, when it comes to chest and helmet, this is important. You don't want to actually have Raiment of the Infinite. I'm using it because I don't have anything better. What you actually want is Godslayer Crown as your helmet, the drop from Duriel. That's the item that will really ramp up your boss damage, and in general just make everything smoother and easier. Because as I say, you'll be killing stuff from quite far away a lot of the time with Frozen Orb. We really don't need the teleport pull-in stun. It doesn't actually help that much. What you actually want is Godslayer Crown in your helmet slot, and then a chest plate like this with a good bit of armor and mana per second to take your chest plate slot and have Ever Living on it. So Ever Living chest, Godslayer helmet. Cool. Then we will go over the rest of the uniques. Of course, Tal Rashes, ever present, always lovely, massive damage increase. We get the easy free stacks in this build. Yeah. Fractured Winterglass. This makes it happen. Do not do this build until you get Fractured Winterglass, or it will be pathetic. Also, do not do this build till you have Tibalt's Will, or you'll keep running out of mana, and it will be pathetic. Tibalt's and Fractured are the requirements here. We will come back to Fractured Winterglass in a moment. As I just said, Tybalt's Will, the extra damage is lovely, but the mana regen is so important. The ability to just refresh and go again, we will get to mana management, but it cannot be overstated. And then Esu's Heirloom for that extra crit chance, and that feeds in to our skill choices too, and it really does add a good chunk, and we need as much crit as we can get. So when it comes to your Fractured Winterglass, I cannot overstate how much you need to get a good roll on this for this build to really take off. I'm talking above 45% on the 35 to 50. You see, my initial one was this one, a low roll, 3854. When I swapped from this one to this one, I started killing bosses specifically where it really makes the difference almost twice as quickly. So yeah, really hard farm a good Fractured Winterglass if you really want to commit to Frozen Orb long term. Okay, when it comes to your gems, you want your critical strike damage in your weapons, you want rubies in your armor, and you want armor in your jewelry. Make sure you are sitting at about 9,200 armor. I'm a little bit below cap here, because I'm waiting to make the swap with Godslayer Crown, where we'll have the extra armor from this chest, and then I can adjust a few things. I also don't have the royal skulls yet, and then I will be there, but make sure you have 9,200 armor. So, affix-wise, there is essentially just a priority system here. First and foremost, you want attack speed anywhere you can get it, like I have on this ring and on my gloves. Attack speed is everything, followed by ranks of Frozen Orb, followed by critical strike chance, followed by lucky hit chance. They are your core 4 offensive aspects. Then you want to solve your mana problems, and you will do that mainly by Tybalt's, but you also want on your chest a mana per second roll. It really helps smooth things out on top of any little bits of resource cost reduction that you can get around the place, and indeed the resource gen that we will be tempering on. Defensively then, once you've sorted your armor, health is generally nice, and then cooldown reduction is the other star of the show. Get as much of that as you can do, and it speeds up the build massively. So your stats-wise, of course, you want all of your resistances, but you want at least 30% crit chance while stood there doing nothing. You want at least 20% attack speed bonus, so I'm still a little bit under here. I want a few more better rolls across my gear. When you come to your lucky hit chance, you want above 30%, so I'm doing quite nicely here, and at least 20% cooldown reduction, as some breakpoints to aim for. When you are piloting this, well, it is quite straightforward, as you might imagine. When Lightning Spear is off cooldown, press Lightning Spear. When Ice Blades is off cooldown, press Ice Blades. That's that sorted. You want to Ice Armor whenever you either don't have a barrier or you're in a bit of a tricky situation. It will keep you going nicely, and then teleport to, move through the dungeon as fast as possible, saving Flame Shield for any oh no moments where you otherwise might die. The rest of the time, you are just holding down the Frozen Orb button and getting as many of them everywhere as possible, as quickly as possible, as you make your way through, destroying everything. Remember now that Frozen Orb will go to specifically where you click it to go, so you do want to specifically target the packs around you, which is a really nice little change that it got, and you can put it right on your face too. When you are hugging a boss and it's meleeing you and you're just Frozen Orbing, you just want to stack it directly on top of you, so it is pulsing nicely on the boss, and then the actual enchantment ones will just auto go out and target enemies, which is really nice too. Remember that every time we press a button, because of the enchantment, we can do an extra Frozen Orb, so this does get very, very spammy. We want as many stacks of Conjuration Mastery as possible, and as many Frozen Orbs going out, so the cycle is propagating as hard as it can, and essentially this is what it looks like. Sadly, we only get to about 5 to 10, whereas in the PTR we'd get about 15, and that's the result of the tweaking to Winterglass. So your mana then you will run out if you just keep firing it like this, and that is certainly a shame. Now, we do get huge mana regen thanks to the conjuration mastery and, of course, your affixes, your resource generation, but this is why you need Tybalt's Will, otherwise you will just keep running out because Frozen Orb with this much attack speed is expensive. So essentially, while doing all of your buttons, whenever you run out, teleport, and there we've filled up with Tybalt's Will. Then we run out again, Flame Shield. Okay, now we've filled up with Tybalt's Will. Both Flame Shield and teleport will make you unstoppable, and therefore trigger Tybalt's, and therefore give you a full mana restore, and you can keep cycling them if you don't need either of them for movement or survivability. Cool! Tempering-wise, on your weapon slot, you want Frost Augments, and you want Chance for Frozen Orb to cast twice. You want it on both your wand and your focus, like I have here. Very happy with that. And you are good to just leave it when you roll it. Don't risk bricking it. When it comes to offensive, you want Frost Finesse. Ideally, you want cold damage, but if you roll vulnerable damage, feel free to keep it so you don't risk ruining the item by ending up with, like, blizzard damage and no rerolls left. So cold, ideally, but vulnerable is fine too. When it comes to your defensive, you want to use it on Worldly Endurance, percent total armor if you still need to reach the 9.2k-ish cap, and then maximum life otherwise. You can go into a little bit of resist, or get the heal or anything if you're feeling spicy, but just kind of keep it straightforward. Then on the utility front, what we want is Worldly Fortune, ideally Lucky Hit Chance to Freeze, as an instant freeze is an even deader enemy as we do way more damage to frozen targets. Then on your mobility, we simply want to get movement speed, and that's all well and good. And then finally on resource, we want worldly stability, and we want specifically resource generation wherever we can. And that's that done. With our amulet being a unique, we don't need to make the choice there, so it's fairly simple and straightforward. Lastly then, the Paragon board, and I am actually really proud of this one. I have been sat staring at it, perfecting it for more time than I care to admit, but we have everything that we need and 7 glyphs active, which is just wonderful. So, keep with me. Now, I have specifically taken the amount of all resist nodes I have to perfectly reach 70% in all resist, which is, of course, the cap, so you might be able to tweak that yourself a little bit, but generally you can't go far wrong copying this point for point. So, Elementalist, Resilience, up to the glyph slot where we have Tactician, as we want the higher bonus to elemental balance, and Erudite, and activating it with the Dex just proved more sensical with how this turned out. Upwards from the Erudite node into Enchantment Master with the glyph in the bottom right corner here, and go straight up to that glyph while getting the bit of intelligence and elemental balance. In here we have Elementalist for that 15% multiplicative, and then we want to go up, getting all the all resist, Erudite itself, past this willpower, and then up and curving round for Ruinous. Sadly, we don't have the spare points for Elementalist in this one. Then we want to head right into our Burning Instinct board for all of that lovely burning synergy, heading straight down to this Strength before going left and grabbing Cinders, then to the Glyph where Destruction finds its regular home, get all of the Dexterity that you can. I sadly don't have the spare point for just this one, which really annoys me, but I just can't find it. But other than that, get everything you can, Smoldering Embers and the 2 Dexterity near it, and then we will just poke up to simply grab Kindling for a nice free damage bump that doesn't cost too many points. Then we will head out and south into Frigid Fate, arranged like this, so this guarded node is in the top right corner. So straight down, head left left here, we want to go to the glyph slot, fire this 2 dexterity, and in this glyph slot we have control. Enemies will always be chilled or frozen, so this is a nice increase, and then we activate it by going down to chilling and grabbing the dex. Then we want to head straight right through weakness from the glyph slot all the way to this dex, detour to get the legendary Frigid Fate node, and then continue on, detour from this willpower up to get guarded, nice bit of DR, and then we want to head into our next board, which is going to be your elemental summoner board. Arrange it so that the keeper of the elements node is here on the left, and then we want to go up and grab it, a nice extra bit of non-physical. Then we want to continue right, going down here through Erudite to the glyph slot where we find Reinforced. Still using it, still very important. We want that DR with the barrier, and here is where we find it. Activated by going down here and grabbing these 2 willpower, and then curving back round into the next board, which is simply here to activate a glyph in the most efficient way possible. It is the Ceaseless Conduit board, and we want the glyph slot in the top right. Head down to it, going through specifically the dexterity on the way, because it is exploit. We're doing a lot of vulnerable damage, so this is really nice to have, and then we want to grab the 1 dex to the right, then continue out through this 2 dex, which will activate it into our final board, which is going to be your Icefall board. In here, we want to go straight up to this willpower, go north from this willpower to get to Icefall, and then we want to go right from it to this non-physical, just grab Polar Rime, and then continue down here to this 7 willpower, left to get Frost, and then right to the glyph slot where we have our final glyph of Flame Feeder for another 10% multiplicative, activated with all of this dexterity on the right via Frigid. And there we have it. Every point precisely where it needs to be with all the glyphs active. As I say, I am very, very pleased with this one. So there we have it, everybody. That is Frozen Orb in its mightiest form as it currently stands in Season 4. There are definitely different variations, different ways to go, different focuses we can take from it, hybrid builds, and all of that I am so excited for and will certainly be bringing you. But in terms of pure, normal, get things done, farm at level 100, get what you need, this is really it, and it is brilliant. I love that Frozen Orb is a proper thing now. For now then, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.